Live from the Heartland Mamas studio, this is the Heartland Mamas podcast. I'm your host, Heidi Henry. The Heartland Mamas podcast is available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and probably part of the Demcast USA network. As of today, we only have 288 days until the November 5th, 2024 election, and I hope you're doing everything you can to get Democrats elected up and down the ticket. Flip it over and vote for your judges. I want you out there knocking doors, writing postcards, sending text messages, making phone calls, holding coffees, holding meet and greets, attending fundraisers, doing everything you can, because this cast, we're going to talk about Roe v. Wade. And if you think it's bad now, just wait. If we reelect Orange Caligula, who's told us he wants to be dictator as of day one, because he'll make an order that rescinds women's right to bodily autonomy on day one. That's the first thing that's going to fall. And everyone of childbearing age is going to have to knuckle down, start cranking out babies to make him happy, to make the far right happy. And we can't allow that to happen. Roe legalized abortion in this country. And for people like me that had a hard time getting and staying pregnant, I needed abortive care during a miscarriage, like millions of other women every year in this country. So when I would start to miscarry, and I don't know why, it was usually pretty early on in my pregnancy, but all of a sudden my body was like, nope, time's up, not going to stay pregnant anymore. I would call my doctor, go to the emergency room, and I'd have a D&C, which is an abortion procedure. They would remove the remaining tissue. I'd usually stay overnight, get some IV fluids and some antibiotics so I could try again, because that's why my children are 8 years apart. I mean, I had a terrible time having kids and just getting and staying pregnant. We had given up. And then we were lucky enough to get our second one, and then decided we couldn't go through the heartbreak of trying for more. So that's where we stopped. And I am not the only woman that's like that. And we've watched women across the country since Roe fell last June. We've watched them suffer and die and be prosecuted and persecuted for one of the most basic human functions on this planet. It's a basic human function all animals, including us, go through. The difference with us is that we can choose not to have children. We can have elective abortions if we want to, especially here in Illinois. And I don't want Orange Caligula to make that choice for anyone. And right now I'm going to say to my TikTok followers, you're going to have to finish watching this either on YouTube or down, on podcast platform, because this is going to go over. There's no way I can get all this done in less than 10 minutes. So I just want you to know that when I had to go in, there was no judgment. There was no hoops to jump through. There was just kindness and compassion in the midst of immense grief. Nobody was yelling at me and trying to make me feel bad because of the medical situation I was in. There was a woman in Texas that died this past week because she had preeclampsia. No one told her that her body was incompatible with pregnancy, and she died. When she went into preeclampsia, they should have performed an abortion and saved her life, but she is expendable. Women have become expendable. We are just vessels. That's it. Smash the vessel, keep the baby. Years ago, somebody asked me, why is it that people have abortions? Don't they realize that could be the next Jesus that they're carrying? No. If you've read your Bible, that's not how it works. It worked that way one time, not every time. What is wrong with you people? So there's never been another medical procedure, never, one so personal and private that is legislated and politicized as much as abortion is. It is a control issue, a way to control women, their futures, their reproductive health, their finances for the rest of their lives. Right now, it's very dangerous to be pregnant in the United States. We have a very high maternal death rate. People die all the time. We had a terrible maternal death rate before Roe fell. Now it's abysmal. And ladies, if you're a woman that's pregnant in one of those states, one of those 38 states, you better get yourself to a state that can help you and take care of you in case you have a crisis while you're pregnant. And they happen all the time. They happened to me. There is no history of what happened in my family. It was unique to me. Of the 7 children in my family, this was unique to me. So there was no reason for me to think that this would be a problem. But it was. But it was. And I'm so grateful that my kids are now 29 and 37. So I don't have to worry about having a baby in America anymore. I mean, in Illinois, you're pretty safe, but I needed abortive care pretty often because of my miscarriages. Right now, it's super expensive to have a child. It's $320,000 just to get them to the age of 18. And every parent knows that your financial responsibility does not end at 18. It doesn't. So I don't even know why we don't say it's $500,000 before they don't need you anymore, before they're fully on their feet. You know, some do better sooner than others, but some takes a long time. You know, when I was a parent, when I had my son, who's 37 now, oh my God, I just remember how wonderful he was and how good he smelled and how much I loved him. But for 6 weeks, I didn't get paid, and we had a mortgage to pay. So 6 weeks after I had him, I had to give him to a stranger to raise so I could go back to work to pay the bills. I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want to leave him at all. I still don't want to leave him, and he doesn't even live around here anymore. He's a grown-up. But I went and I worked. I had to go back to work. My husband had to work. We both had to work. And most people don't raise their own children. Since Reagan removed the taxes from the wealthy and placed them flat onto the middle class, onto the backs of working people. Instead of somebody being home with the kids while they were little and being home for them after school, every household became a 2-income household. Every household. We didn't have child care centers, daycare centers when I was a kid. A few kids had stayed at the neighbors after school, not too many. And most of them, it was because the dad had either died or one was in an iron lung, so the mom was working. But nobody went to daycare. Some kids went to preschool before Reagan, but they didn't. The parents picked them up and took them home afterwards and raised them until they went off to school. And then after school, somebody was home for them until they were old enough to look after themselves. And then both parents usually worked. One parent resumed their career wherever that was at. So we had no daycare centers back in the day. No, we didn't do that. Well, yeah, a few did, but it wasn't loud. Everybody does. Everybody does. You put them in daycare when they're small and helpless, because of Reagan's tax cuts to the wealthy. That's when we started doing that. And also meant that daycare centers have to be everywhere, and that your parents and grandparents couldn't help out because Reagan also started taxing Social Security, so they had to keep working. They could not care for their child, grandchild, great-grandchild. They had to work. Children have been raised by strangers since 1982, and we hope we can trust them. I think about all the dysfunction in kids right now, all of the dysfunction. And I wonder, had they been reared and nurtured in home by a parent, would there be so many issues? We have kids with profound issues of abandonment. Their emotional needs may not have been met when they were very small. They have detachment disorder. They have oppositional defiant disorder, which is also a social emotional type of learning disorder that can be fostered and grown by not being cared for as an infant. And if you go into some of these centers and there's a gazillion babies being cared for by a couple of people, so they're either left in their carriers or left in the swing set or left in the crib or laid out in a bunch of bundles on the floor, are they getting everything they need? Do they get routine, regular discipline or guidance when they need it? Or do they suffer from physical abuse? We don't know because we're not there. There's not nanny cams everywhere. We also have nutritional imbalances. We have a lot of kids that are overweight right now. We have mental health and growth needs not being met. Is this because strangers are raising our children? We don't know. We might never know what this decades of neoliberal garbage from Reaganomics has done to our children and our families. And now we have multi-generational children that have been raised in this dysfunction.